I never expected things to turn out this way. A mother's love, I thought, was supposed to be unconditional. It was supposed to build bonds that would last a lifetime. But now, I'm left standing in the middle of an emotional battlefield, holding nothing but shattered dreams. James had always been my everything. I raised him alone after his father walked out on us. I sacrificed so much to make sure he had a better life. Endless hours working as a housekeeper, pushing through every single hardship to ensure he could go to school, have nice things, and live a life far better than mine ever was. I did it all with a smile on my face, even when my back ached and my health deteriorated. But it was worth it, I thought. I kept reminding myself that one day my sacrifices would be worth it. When James was just 18, he faced a life-threatening condition. His kidney was failing, and the doctor said it was either a transplant or he wouldn't make it. I didn't hesitate. I donated mine, thinking that my love for him would strengthen the bond between us. And for a while, it did. He survived, and I felt like I had given him not just my kidney, but my soul. But the years passed, and something changed. Slowly, like the slow erosion of a once solid cliff, James grew distant. He got married, had a life of his own. Nicole, his wife, had always been a quiet presence in our lives, but lately she started speaking up more, pushing me aside in ways I didn't quite notice at first. Every little decision was made without consulting me. Every word I said seemed to fall on deaf ears. It wasn't just Nicole, though. James had changed too. It wasn't the change I expected after everything I'd done for him. He'd gone from a grateful son to someone who barely acknowledged my presence unless he needed something. I never asked for much in return, just a little love, a little gratitude. But now, I'm not sure he even remembers the woman who stayed awake through sleepless nights caring for him. When I lost my job due to age discrimination, I didn't expect sympathy. I didn't even expect a call from James asking if I was okay. But I never thought he would react the way he did. He was cold, dismissive, accusing me of being lazy. "Mom, you can't just sit around now. What are you going to do, just freeload?" Those words cut deeper than anything I could have prepared for. I gave him everything, and now he was calling me a burden. It felt like a slap across my face, but worse, it felt like a final goodbye to the son I once knew. I turned away, holding back tears. I didn't want him to see my weakness. But as I walked out, something inside me snapped. I had sacrificed so much for him, but I wasn't going to let him or anyone else take from me anymore. I wasn't going to stay where I wasn't wanted. And then a part of me, a very quiet, hidden part of me, whispered, "It's time to take back your life." I never imagined that the day I told James I'd lost my job would end like this. I had always thought that no matter what happened, I'd always be his mother, his rock. But it felt like that rock was being pulled out from under me, leaving me stumbling to stay upright. It was a quiet afternoon when I called him, sitting in my tiny motel room. My heart was heavy, not just from losing my job, but from the fear of how this news might affect James. He had always been the one to lean on me when things got tough, but I knew, deep down, that he was getting to a place where I wasn't as needed anymore. And that thought terrified me. "James, I need to tell you something," I started, my voice trembling as I dialed his number. "I lost my job today." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathe deeply before he spoke, his voice cool and dismissive. "Why would you do that, Mom?" he asked. "That was $8,000, 0 cents a month. What's your plan now?" I was taken aback. It wasn't the concern I'd expected. There was no "are you okay?" or "what can I do to help?" It was a sharp, cutting tone that made my stomach churn. "You need to stop being so reckless," he continued. I can't believe this. You're just going to sit around now, right? I felt my face flush. His words hit me like a slap. Here I was, fighting for survival, trying to figure out what was next for me, and he was treating me like I'd just thrown everything away. James, I've been working for years. It wasn't like I wanted this to happen. But I'll figure it out, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You're figuring it out? How? I'm already dealing with enough, Mom, he shot back. You know Nicole and I are trying to make it work. And now this? You're just going to add more stress? What did you expect? I could feel the tension rising in my chest. The anger was building, and I had to fight to keep it down. James, I'm not asking for anything from you. I just wanted to let you know what happened. I thought you should know. Yeah, well, you should have thought about that before quitting, he spat. You can't just drop everything and expect us to pick up the pieces. That's not how this works. You're still in great shape, Mom. Just go back to work. Why should I have to deal with this? It's your choice. The words stung, but I stayed quiet for a moment, letting them sink in. I had to fight to keep my tears back. I wasn't going to let him see how much he was hurting me. I wasn't going to be his punching bag anymore. Well, I guess it's a good thing. I don't need to depend on you anymore, huh? I finally said, my voice low but steady. I don't need to worry about you anymore. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. For a second, I thought he was going to say something, maybe apologize, but no, instead, I heard him mutter, I just don't understand why you didn't think about us first. I've always put you first, James, I thought, but I didn't say it. Instead, I just ended the call. That night, I stared at the walls of my motel room, feeling more alone than I ever had before. I had given my whole life to him, but now I was just a nuisance, a burden, nothing more. But something inside me clicked. This wasn't just about losing my job. It was about finally seeing the truth. I wasn't part of their lives anymore. I wasn't the mother who could be counted on. Not in their eyes. For so many years, I'd allowed myself to be invisible, to become their emotional and financial safety net. But not anymore. I had a hidden fortune that no one knew about. Catherine's gift to me, the inheritance that I had kept secret, was a key. A key to something bigger than I could have imagined. A key to finally breaking free. The next morning, I made a decision. I wouldn't be their doormat anymore. I wasn't going back to be their emotional crutch. I was done. Done being used, done sacrificing for people who saw me as nothing more than a tool. It was time to start living for me. It was early evening when I gathered my things. The small motel room felt like a prison, its walls closing in on me with every passing minute. I had spent the last few days trying to figure out what came next, but even with the hidden fortune I had discovered, I felt like I was still in shock. Leaving everything behind was a big step, but I had no choice now. I wasn't going back to them. I called a cab to take me to the old apartment, the one I had sold years ago, the one I had held onto for all those memories. I needed to collect a few things I'd left behind before moving forward. When I arrived, the door creaked open with the same worn-out sound it had always made. I hadn't seen this place in months. The emptiness of it hit me all at once. Memories flooded back. The endless nights staying up with James when he was sick, the quiet dinners, the laughter that once filled this space. Now it was just me, standing in the doorway with no place to go but forward. The apartment was quieter than I remembered, the silence now heavy with what had happened. I walked through the small space, touching the items I had once cherished. Pictures of James as a child, the old family photos I had painstakingly put together. The corners of my mouth twitched, but I quickly wiped away the tear that threatened to escape. It wasn't the same anymore. I wasn't the person I used to be. I had given so much only to end up like this. Suddenly, my phone buzzed in my pocket, the vibration sending a shock through my body. It was a message from James. Mom, I'm sorry. I know things got heated, but please come back. Nicole and we want to make things right. I stared at the message for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to go back, to forgive him. Maybe I was wrong for pushing him away, but deep down I knew I couldn't. I had to stand my ground. It was time for me to be the person I was meant to be. Not the mother who sacrificed everything, but the woman who had a life of her own, one she could build for herself, without anyone else's expectations weighing her down. I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly as I wrote, I'm done, James. I can't come back. I need to live for me now. I can't keep giving when I get nothing in return. I hit send and stared at the screen, waiting for him to respond. I didn't expect him to understand. I didn't expect an apology. I had already said goodbye in my heart. This was the last time. And just like that, something shifted inside me. I wasn't the same woman who had left this apartment. I had grown stronger, more independent. I packed the last of my things, including a small photo album I'd kept hidden for years. As I stepped out of the apartment for the last time, I looked back at the building one last time. It had been home, but now, it was just a place I used to live. The cab ride back to the motel was a blur. I could feel the weight of what I had just done, but there was a strange sense of calm, too. The world felt different now. I wasn't bound to my past anymore. I didn't have to keep pretending to be the person everyone wanted me to be. As I sat in the cab, staring out the window, I thought about my next steps. The inheritance from Catherine, the fortune I had kept hidden, was the beginning of my freedom. No one knew about it. No one needed to know about it. I had the resources to rebuild my life. I could create something new, something I had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. I was done being taken for granted, done being invisible. I had my life ahead of me, and this time, it was going to be on my terms. I spent the next few days trying to settle into my new routine. The motel room was small, and though it wasn't much, it was mine. I didn't have to answer to anyone. I didn't have to worry about whether I was in the way or if someone would come in and tell me to leave. It was quiet, almost peaceful in its own way. But there was something else that was tugging at me. The money. Catherine's inheritance. The moment I'd discovered it, I'd felt a mix of awe and guilt. The money wasn't just money. It was a lifeline. It was my escape. But it also meant I had the power to finally take control of my life. I didn't need to rely on James. I didn't need to depend on anyone ever again. I hadn't accessed the full details of the inheritance yet, just the basics. Catherine's lawyer had sent me the initial documents. But there was still so much more I didn't know. One evening, after a long day of thinking and pacing in my tiny motel room, I decided to do it. I opened the folder that the lawyer had sent and began reading through it carefully. It wasn't just a sum of money. It was an entire estate, complete with assets, a trust fund, and a private account Catherine had set up specifically for me. I felt like I had discovered a secret treasure hidden in plain sight. But what hit me hardest was a letter tucked in the back of the folder. It was from Catherine herself, addressed to me. It wasn't just about the money. It was a message, one that I hadn't expected. I've watched you all these years, Laura. I've seen the sacrifices you've made, the heartache you've endured. You've given so much to others, but now it's your turn. This money is just a start. Use it wisely, but remember, your worth isn't just in what you do for others. It's in who you are. Live for yourself now, and don't look back. I stared at the letter, letting the words sink in. It was as if Catherine had known exactly what I needed to hear at this moment. She had given me more than just money. She had given me permission to live my own life. For the first time in years, I felt something inside me stir. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of something new. The more I read, the more I realized how much Catherine had set aside for me. Not just for my future security, but to help me reclaim my independence. The estate was mine now, completely. There were no strings attached. The money had been legally transferred to my name, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Not James, not Nicole, not anyone. A flood of emotions hit me all at once. Relief, disbelief, and a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer at the mercy of James's temper or Nicole's manipulation. I was free to do whatever I wanted, to create the life I had always dreamed of. But with the freedom came a new challenge. How would I use this newfound wealth? What was I going to do with it all? I didn't want to just sit on it and let it collect dust. I wanted to make a real change in my life. I wanted to build something meaningful, something that would be mine and mine alone. I made a decision. The first thing I would do was buy a small house by the ocean, somewhere quiet where I could truly start over. I had always wanted to live near the water. The thought of it calmed me, soothed me. It was where I could finally be at peace, away from the noise and stress of everything I had left behind. The second decision was a bit more personal. I wasn't going to tell anyone about the full extent of my inheritance, not even James. They didn't deserve to know. This was mine, a gift I had earned through years of sacrifice. It wasn't for them, it was for me. I called a real estate agent the next morning, made arrangements, and before I knew it, I had a new place. A little house by the sea. It wasn't much, but it was perfect for me. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. And with that thought, I realized something important. I wasn't just running away from my past. I was running towards my future. A future where I would finally live for myself. The days blurred together after I moved into the small house by the ocean. It wasn't much, just a cozy cottage with a worn wooden porch and a view of the waves crashing against the shore. But it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life. The salt air, the sound of the water, it all felt like a balm for my soul, washing away the hurt that had built up over the years. I spent my mornings walking along the beach, letting the cool waves touch my toes, feeling the sand shift beneath me. Every step felt like a step away from the past, away from the person I had been, the one who gave and never received anything in return. The peace was healing, but there was something else too, a growing excitement about what was to come. For the first time, I was starting to think about me. What did I want? What did I need? I'd always lived my life for others, first for my son, then for James and Nicole, but I had forgotten about myself in the process. Now there was no one to answer to but me. I started small. I cleaned out the house, got rid of the old things I didn't need anymore. There were no more cluttered rooms, no more reminders of the life I'd left behind. As I worked, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in years. This house, this life, it was mine to shape. One afternoon, I decided to take a walk into the nearby town. It was a small, sleepy place with a few shops and a cafe by the water. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, but no one asked too many questions. I liked that. The anonymity was refreshing. I went into the cafe, ordered a coffee, and sat by the window, watching the world go by. The people here were different. They weren't busy with the noise of their own lives, the rush to get ahead. They were content, at peace with themselves. It was a pace I hadn't known in years, and I wanted to be a part of it. While I sipped my coffee, I noticed a flyer on the bulletin board, a notice for a community garden project. They were looking for volunteers. I smiled to myself. It was a small thing, but it felt like a perfect way to connect with the community. It was also a way for me to give back, but in a way that wouldn't drain me. I could help, but I wouldn't lose myself in the process. I signed up feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't had in years. I had always loved gardening. It reminded me of when James was little and we'd plant flowers together in the yard. Those were the simpler times, before everything got complicated. Over the next few days, I worked in the garden. The people were kind, and I could tell they didn't care about my past. They didn't know the story of how I had been kicked out of my own son's house, nor did I need them to. They saw me for who I was now, just another neighbor, another person trying to make something good out of life. In the evenings, I sat on the porch of my new home watching the sunset. The colors in the sky were always different, but they were always beautiful. It reminded me that no matter how hard things got, there was always beauty in the world if you just took the time to see it. I thought about James sometimes, about the way he had treated me, the way he had discarded me. I wondered if he even missed me, but I quickly pushed the thought away. I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't keep letting him and Nicole have a hold on my life. And then there was the money. Catherine's fortune. It was safe, locked away for now. I didn't want to think about it too much, but I knew it was a resource I could use. It wasn't just a cushion, it was my freedom. It would allow me to do the things I'd always dreamed of but never had the chance to do. I started making plans. Small ones at first, maybe a few trips, exploring new places, getting to know myself in a way I never had before. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I could do more. I could use the money to create something meaningful, something that would give me purpose. Maybe I'd start a small business. Maybe I'd travel the world. Whatever I chose, it was going to be mine. And that realization that I could do whatever I wanted felt like the first real breath of freedom I'd taken in years. It had been a few weeks since I moved into the house by the ocean, and I had settled into my new routine. The days were simple, peaceful. I spent my mornings in the garden, tending to the plants, and my afternoons walking along the shore. It was the kind of life I'd always dreamed of, a life free from the noise and stress of the world. I could breathe here. But peace is often interrupted by the things we'd rather forget. One evening, as I sat on the porch enjoying the fading sunlight, my phone rang. The number on the screen wasn't familiar, but something about it made my heart skip a beat. I knew who it was before I even picked up. James. I hesitated for a moment, the familiar weight of old emotions pressing down on me. I had spent so many years living for him, giving everything I had. Now he was calling, and I knew it wasn't to check on me. It never was. He only called when he needed something. I sighed and answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. Hello? Mom, James said, his voice almost too soft. I've been thinking a lot about what happened. Look, I'm sorry. Things got out of hand. Nicole and we both made mistakes. Can we talk? My stomach tightened. His tone was calm, almost apologetic, but I could hear the underlying desperation in his voice, the kind of desperation that came when someone realized they had lost control of a situation. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the ocean as I listened. Part of me wanted to give in, to hear him out, but the other part, the stronger part, was reminding me of everything I had been through. The sacrifices, the endless giving, only to be thrown away like garbage when I was no longer useful. What is it, James? I asked, my voice steady. What do you want from me? There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear the sound of his breathing, his hesitation. Mom, we need help. Nicole and I are in a tight spot. We're behind on bills, and things are getting worse. I don't know what to do. I was hoping maybe you could help us out. Just a little. I know I've messed up, but we're really struggling here. I felt my chest tighten. There it was, the old pattern, the same one that had played out 1,000 times before. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for money. No, I said firmly, my voice cutting through the silence. I can't help you, James. What? He sounded taken aback. Mom, come on. We're family. You've always been there for me. Don't you care about us? I do care, I said, my voice growing stronger. But I can't keep giving. I've given you everything, James, and now it's time for me to take care of myself. I'm not your bank. I'm not your safety net anymore. There was a pause. I could feel the weight of the silence on the other end. For a moment I thought he might apologize, really apologize for everything. But then I heard it. You don't understand, Mom, he said, his voice rising. You've always made everything about you. You don't get it. Nicole and I are trying to make a life together, and you're just throwing it all away. You're selfish. I need you, but you just don't care. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. His words were sharp, cold, and they cut through me, deeper than anything he had ever said before. But I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. Not this time. No, James, I said quietly but firmly. You don't get to call me selfish. You don't get to turn this around on me. I've been nothing but selfless for years, and now I'm taking back my life. You can't keep using me. There was a long pause, and for the first time, I heard a crack in his voice. Please, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I don't know what to do anymore. I need you. I felt my heart soften, but I quickly pushed the feeling aside. He had his chance. He had every opportunity to treat me like a mother, like someone who mattered, and he threw it away. James, I'm sorry, I said, my voice steady but resolute. But I'm done. I've given you everything I had, and now it's time for me. I'm done being the one who's always there when you need something. You'll have to figure it out on your own. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt final. It felt like I had severed the last tie that had kept me bound to him. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing after someone who couldn't love me back. I wasn't being used. I had taken back my power. And it felt damn good. It had been a week since I severed ties with James, and though the silence was deafening at times, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't constantly walking on eggshells, worrying about what James and Nicole needed or how I was supposed to fix their problems. It was strange, but in a good way. I spent most of my time unpacking and getting the house settled. There was still a lot of work to do, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't in a hurry. I could take my time, do things at my own pace. The ocean waves outside became my constant soundtrack, a reminder of how much I had gained by walking away from the life I had built around them. But just when I thought I could finally breathe easy, I received a phone call that threatened to disrupt everything. It was late in the afternoon, and I had just finished planting some lavender by the porch when my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was a local number, one I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Hello? Is this Laura Hayes? The voice on the other end was smooth, almost too smooth. Yes, who's calling? My name is Janet. I work for the law firm representing the estate of Catherine Hayes. The name hit me like a jolt. Catherine? But she had already passed. Why would anyone be calling me from her estate? We've been trying to get in touch with you. It's about some additional details regarding your inheritance, Janet continued. There are some matters we need to discuss. Could you come in for a meeting tomorrow? We have some documents for you to sign. I felt my chest tighten. What could this be about? I hadn't expected to deal with Catherine's estate any further. Everything had been settled. But something about the way Janet spoke raised a flag in my mind. Why the sudden urgency? I I wasn't expecting this. Why didn't you contact me sooner? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I apologize for the confusion. There's been a mix-up in the paperwork. It's nothing serious, just a formality. We'll explain everything when you arrive. I agreed to meet with her the next day, though the nagging feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. I had been so focused on starting my new life that I had almost forgotten about the inheritance, but now it seemed to be catching up with me. The next morning, I drove to the law office, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. When I walked into the sleek, modern building, I felt out of place. I had spent so many years working in homes, cleaning for others. Now I was the one sitting across from a lawyer in a posh office. It was surreal, but I was starting to understand that I had earned this moment. I had earned everything that was about to happen. Janet greeted me with a forced smile, and I could tell immediately that something was off. She had the air of someone who was pretending to be professional, but there was an underlying tension in her posture. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Hayes. Please have a seat," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. I sat down, feeling my palms sweat. "So, what's this about?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Well," Janet started, flipping through a stack of papers on her desk, "it appears that there are some additional funds tied to the estate, some assets that were not disclosed previously." I frowned. "What do you mean? Everything was settled." Janet hesitated, and for a moment I thought she might backtrack. But then she continued, her eyes flickering toward the door as though she wanted to make sure no one overheard. "There's a property. Catherine didn't just leave you money. She also left you a piece of land. It's very valuable, but there's a catch." Her voice lowered, as if she was about to reveal a dangerous secret. "There are other people who claim it's theirs, and they are already trying to dispute the inheritance." My mind spun. Other people? What was she talking about? Catherine had never mentioned anything like this. "And who are these people?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. Well, people from Catherine's past. People she had connections with long before she met you. You see, the estate has been under scrutiny, and some believe Catherine didn't have the right to leave this property to you. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean, didn't have the right? I was her only heir. There's no one else." "That's what we thought," Janet said, her voice dropping even lower. "But there's a man named Harold Clark. He's been trying to get his hands on the property for years, and now that Catherine is gone, he's making his move." I sat there in shock, trying to process what I was hearing. Harold Clark? Who was he, and why hadn't Catherine ever mentioned him? "We don't know much about him yet," Janet continued, "but he's involved with some unsavory people. And if he gets control of the property, he could make things very difficult for you." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about power. And someone was trying to take it away from me. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "We needed to get the paperwork in order before bringing this to you," Janet replied, her tone suddenly more cautious. "But I'll be honest, Mrs. Hayes, I don't think this will be an easy fight." I stood up abruptly, the sudden rush of adrenaline making my heart race. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice shaking with uncertainty. "Well, we can start by getting you the legal protection you need, but you'll have to be prepared for a battle, and trust me, it won't be easy." I nodded, feeling a surge of determination rising within me. No one was going to take this from me. I had fought for my entire life to get to this point, and I wasn't going to let some stranger take away the future I had finally begun to build. As I left the office, I knew things were about to get much more complicated. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had nothing left to lose. The next few days were a blur of legal jargon and documents I barely understood. Janet's words echoed in my mind. Harold Clark. The name of someone I'd never heard of. Yet someone who now seemed determined to take what was mine. Catherine had left me this inheritance, but it felt like every step I took to claim it was met with resistance. I couldn't just sit back and wait for things to happen. I had to act. So I spent the next couple of days reaching out to anyone who might know more about this Harold Clark and his connections to Catherine. I needed to understand who I was up against, and I needed to be prepared for whatever was coming. It was on the third day after my meeting with Janet that I decided to take a break and clear my head. I hadn't been out much since moving to this coastal town, and I felt the need for a change of scenery. A walk along the beach always helped me think, so I grabbed my jacket and set out, the salty breeze brushing against my face as I made my way down the shore. As I walked, I passed a few locals who smiled and nodded as they went about their day. The town was small, but it had a certain charm. People here didn't ask too many questions. It was a place where you could blend in, and that's exactly what I wanted. That's when I saw him, an older man sitting on a bench near the pier. He was feeding the seagulls, his face weathered by time, but there was something familiar about him. He looked like someone who had seen a lot in his life. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was an instinct inside me telling me to stop. I hesitated for a moment before walking up to him. "Excuse me," I said, my voice soft. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I couldn't help but notice you seem to know this town well." He looked up at me, his eyes squinting in the bright afternoon sun. There was a hint of recognition in his gaze, but nothing that made me feel like I was crossing a line. "I've lived here my whole life," he said, his voice gravelly but warm. "Name's Frank. What's on your mind?" I sat down beside him, glancing at the seagulls as they fought over the breadcrumbs he tossed at them. There was something soothing about the simplicity of the moment. "I'm new here," I started, trying to sound casual. "I recently moved in not too far from here. I'm just trying to get to know the area a bit. I was wondering if you might know anything about a man named Harold Clark." His face immediately changed. His eyes narrowed, and he shifted slightly on the bench, as though he was trying to decide whether or not he should say anything. For a moment I thought he might get up and walk away, but instead he leaned in closer. "Harold Clark?" he muttered. "You're asking about him?" I nodded. "Yes. I've heard his name recently, and it's been linked to something important. I'm trying to understand who he is and maybe why he's suddenly interested in my inheritance." Frank paused for a long time, his eyes flickering between the seagulls and the horizon. Then, slowly, he turned to face me, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're connected to Catherine Hayes, aren't you?" I felt a chill run through me at the mention of Catherine's name. How did he know that? My mind raced, and I tried to keep my face neutral. "Yes," I said cautiously. "Catherine left me something when she passed, but now someone named Harold Clark is claiming it." Frank's gaze turned serious, and his weathered hands clenched tightly around the breadcrumbs. "Harold Clark is trouble. He's been after that property for years. He's the kind of man who won't stop until he gets what he wants. And when he finds out you're involved, he won't stop at anything." I felt my heart race. "What do you mean? Who is he?" Frank took a deep breath, as if he was gathering the strength to say something that had been weighing on him for a long time. "He's not just some businessman. Harold Clark is a former associate of Catherine's, a very former associate. They had dealings years ago, things that no one talks about. But I'll tell you this, he's not someone you want to cross. If he's interested in that property, it's because it's more valuable than you realize." I leaned forward, the words hanging heavy in the air. "What does that mean? What's so special about it?" Frank looked around, almost as if he was afraid someone might overhear us. He leaned in closer. "There's land beneath that property, land that was once part of something much bigger. a hidden asset. Catherine knew about it, but she kept it a secret. No one knew, not even her closest friends. But Harold? He's been searching for that land for years, and if he finds it, he'll do whatever it takes to get it. I sat back, trying to process everything he had just told me. My head was spinning. Hidden assets. Catherine had known something about this land, something I didn't know. And now, Harold Clark wanted it. How do you know all of this? I asked, my voice low. Frank gave a small, weary smile. I've been around for a long time, Laura. I've seen things, heard things. Some people like to forget the past, but some of us can't. I stood up, my legs shaky. Thank you, Frank. I don't know what to say. He nodded, his gaze softening. Just be careful, and if you want to keep that property, you'll need to be ready. Harold Clark doesn't play by the rules. Don't let him take it from you. As I walked away, I felt the weight of Frank's words sinking in. Harold Clark wasn't just a businessman or some opportunist. He was someone dangerous. And now I had to fight for what was mine. The next few days after my conversation with Frank felt like a whirlwind. I couldn't shake the unease that clung to me, and I knew I needed to be ready. Harold Clark wasn't just after a piece of land. He was after something far more valuable than I had realized. Something Catherine had kept hidden from everyone, even me. I spent hours scouring through every document I had on Catherine's estate, trying to piece together the puzzle. Frank's warning echoed in my mind. Harold Clark would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. The thought made my blood run cold. But I wasn't about to back down, not after everything I had been through. That evening, just as I sat down to make another round of calls to lawyers, my phone buzzed. The number on the screen was unfamiliar. My heart skipped a beat when I saw it. I hesitated for a moment. I hadn't heard from him since our last conversation, and the anger I had felt then was still fresh in my mind. But I knew I couldn't keep running from him forever. He was still my son, after all. I answered the call, trying to sound calm. Hello? Mom, James said, his voice softer than I had expected. I've been thinking about what happened, and I'm sorry for how I treated you. I should have been there for you. I wasn't thinking. Can we talk? I let out a long breath. His words caught me off guard. For a moment, I almost believed him. I wanted to believe that he was finally realizing the mistakes he'd made, but something in his tone didn't sit right. It felt too rehearsed, too easy. I'm not sure there's anything left to say, James, I replied, my voice steady but guarded. You made your choices. You've shown me exactly who you are. I can't keep going back to that. Please, Mom, I know I've messed up, but I'm trying to fix things. I really am, he insisted. I need your help. I felt a sharp pang in my chest at his words, but it wasn't the pang of love or sympathy. It was the pang of realization. The truth was clear to me now. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for something else. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew exactly what he was after. I can't help you, James, I said, my voice hardening. Not anymore. You've had all the help you're going to get from me. There was a pause, and for a brief second I thought he might just accept my answer. But then his voice became more insistent. You're really going to leave me like this, Mom? His tone shifted, now carrying an edge of frustration. You've always been the one I could count on. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I'm your son. You can't just walk away from me. The words stung, but I didn't flinch. I had heard enough. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. I'm not walking away, James, I said firmly. I'm just finally living for myself. I've spent my entire life putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own, and I'm done with that. You'll have to figure it out on your own. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear James breathing heavily, but he didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low and defeated. You don't get it, do you? I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for family. And you're just gone. I took a deep breath, my hands clenched into fists. You've had family, James. You've had me. But you turned your back on that, and now it's my turn to walk away. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. My chest was tight and my hands trembled slightly, but there was no hesitation in my heart. I had made the right decision. As I sat there, the weight of the call settling in, I realized that I had truly let go. For so long, I had tried to fix everything for James, tried to be the mother who always did everything right, but now I was done. I had been there for him when it mattered, and he had thrown it all away. I wasn't his crutch anymore. I wasn't anyone's crutch anymore. And that was liberating. The silence in the house was deafening after my conversation with James. The weight of what had just happened seemed to hang in the air like a heavy fog, but at the same time I felt an unexpected relief. I had finally done what I needed to do, severed the tie that had been dragging me down for so long. But even as I sat in the calm of my new home, the feeling of peace didn't last. The unsettling events with Harold Clark, the strange words from Frank, and now the manipulative call from James, they all weighed on me. Something was off, something deeper was at play, and I had a creeping feeling that I was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. I couldn't just sit here and wait for things to happen. The inheritance, Catherine's fortune, this mysterious land. Everything was connected, and I needed answers. The unease inside me grew stronger by the day. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, sifting through the documents I had on Catherine's estate. I had already gone through them once, but I needed to go through them again, this time with a clear purpose. I pulled out the manila folder containing the legal papers and the note Catherine had written to me. Her words still echoed in my mind. Your worth isn't just in what you do for others. It's in who you are. I was trying to make sense of everything when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the timing was a bit too perfect. The sudden sound startled me. I stood up, my heart beating faster. Who could it be? I walked toward the door, my hand lingering on the doorknob. When I opened it, I was surprised to see a man standing on my porch, holding a small box. His appearance was ordinary enough, tall in a suit that looked a little too sharp for a small coastal town, but there was something about the way he stood there, his expression unreadable, that sent a chill down my spine. Good evening, Mrs. Hayes, he said, his voice calm and professional. I'm William Hart. I work with the law firm handling Catherine Hayes's estate. I believe you've been expecting some documents. I blinked, taken aback. I hadn't been expecting anyone, certainly not someone from the law firm. Yes, I said, my voice cautious. I've been working with Janet, but I wasn't expecting anything tonight. I understand, William replied, his smile never reaching his eyes. This is a special delivery, a few additional papers that require your immediate attention. It's important that you review them as soon as possible. He handed me the small box. Please take a look, and if you need any assistance, don't hesitate to contact us. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the fading light of the evening. I stood there for a moment, staring at the box in my hands. There was something about the whole exchange that felt off. I wasn't sure what it was, but a nagging feeling told me that this wasn't just about paperwork. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and carefully set the box on the table. Inside was a stack of neatly folded papers along with a letter. I ripped the letter open first. Dear Mrs. Hayes, we hope this message finds you well. As you may know, there are still some matters pending regarding the estate of your late benefactor, Catherine Hayes. While most of the estate has been transferred, a final clause in her will has come to light, which requires your signature. Please review the attached documents carefully, as they pertain to a piece of property that Catherine had secured for you. We understand this is sudden, but we advise you to act quickly to ensure everything proceeds smoothly. Yours sincerely, William Hart. I felt my stomach turn as I read the letter. A final clause in her will? A piece of property Catherine had secured for me? I had thought everything had been settled. This was new, and it didn't sit right with me. Why wasn't Janet handling this? I set the letter down and pulled out the rest of the papers. There were documents related to the land maps, property deeds, and legal descriptions that looked like they had been hastily put together. There was a clause about an easement, which I didn't fully understand, and references to ownership that didn't match anything Catherine had told me. My heart skipped a beat. I could feel the walls closing in. This wasn't just paperwork, it was a tangled web of legal maneuvering, and I could sense that something shady was going on. There was a part of me that wanted to just throw it all away, to pretend like this was just a mistake, but deep down, I knew I couldn't ignore it. The name Harold Clark appeared once again in the documents, tucked in the fine print. He wasn't just a claimant, he was an active participant in the legal battle over this land. I slammed the papers down on the table, my hands shaking. Janet, William, Harold Clark, everyone involved had been playing a game I hadn't been prepared for. This wasn't just about inheriting a property, it was about something much bigger, something Catherine had kept hidden from everyone, and now I was tangled in it. I needed to find out who Harold Clark really was. I needed to know what he had planned. This wasn't just an inheritance anymore. It was a fight for something far more dangerous. I wasn't going to let him win. Not now, not ever. The following days felt like a whirlwind. Every time I thought I was getting closer to understanding the situation, something new cropped up. Harold Clark's name kept popping up in the documents, always lurking in the background like a shadow I couldn't escape. But the more I learned about him, the more I realized I didn't know. Who was this man, really? Why was he so determined to take what Catherine had left me? I had a meeting with Janet scheduled, but I wasn't sure what to expect. I knew she wasn't completely honest with me, but I had to try to get more answers. The legal team had been shady from the start, and I had a growing sense that they were working more for Harold than for me. When I walked into the law office, I could tell right away that something was off. Janet wasn't at her usual desk. Instead, I was greeted by a man I hadn't seen before. He looked mid-40s, well-dressed with a polished professional air about him. But there was something about the way he looked at me that made me suspicious. "Miss Hayes," he asked, his tone smooth, yet almost too friendly. "I'm Alex Thompson. I'll be assisting you today. Please, have a seat." I took the chair across from him, my senses on high alert. This wasn't what I expected. Where was Janet? And why was Alex handling my case now? "Is there something wrong with Janet?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, Janet's just tied up with another case. Nothing for you to worry about. I'm sure you'd prefer to get down to business anyway, right?" I nodded, though my gut was telling me to be careful. Something wasn't adding up. "So, I've been reviewing the documents regarding Catherine's estate," Alex continued, sliding a few papers across the table toward me. "There's been some confusion about the land. It seems like some legal technicalities have come into play, and unfortunately, Harold Clark is involved." I clenched my fists beneath the table, but I kept my face neutral. "I've heard his name mentioned before. What's his interest in the property?" Alex hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting briefly to the papers in front of him before meeting mine. "That's not entirely clear. What we do know is that Harold Clark has a history with Catherine, both personal and professional. It's a complicated matter, one that I'm not sure you're fully aware of. I leaned forward, ignoring the twinge of frustration in my chest. I want to know. I need to know. Everything. What was Catherine involved in with Harold? Alex's expression darkened for just a moment, and then he quickly masked it with a professional smile. I'm not at liberty to discuss the full details, but suffice it to say, Harold Clark has been a thorn in Catherine's side for years, and now that she's gone, he's making his move to secure what he believes is rightfully his. I narrowed my eyes. And you're helping him? The question hung in the air, sharp and accusing. Alex didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers together. No, Miss Hayes. I'm here to help you. But you need to understand that this isn't a simple inheritance dispute. This involves a great deal of history. Catherine's will. It wasn't just about giving you assets. It was about protecting something important. Something Harold will stop at nothing to get. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This was bigger than I thought. It wasn't just about money or land. It was about a fight for something powerful. Something Catherine had kept hidden. Something Harold was willing to destroy for. But what was it? I need to know what it is, I said, my voice calm but demanding. I need to know why Harold Clark is so determined to take it from me. Alex hesitated again, then sighed. All right, he said quietly, his tone shifting. I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but I think you deserve to know. Catherine didn't just leave you money or property. She left you a key to a much larger puzzle. There's a vault hidden away containing documents and assets that go far beyond anything you've seen so far. A chill ran through me. A vault? Yes, and Harold knows about it. He's been trying to get his hands on those documents for years, but Catherine made sure that only you could access it. The vault's location is known only to you. I sat back, stunned. This was no longer just about a piece of land or some inheritance. It was about something much more valuable, something that could change everything. But why me, I whispered, more to myself than to Alex. Why did she leave it to me? Alex leaned in, his voice low. Because you were the only one she trusted. She knew you were strong enough to protect it, but now you have to be careful. There are people after it. People who would do anything to get their hands on it, and Harold Clark is just the tip of the iceberg. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I felt like I had just uncovered a piece of the puzzle, but I still didn't have all the pieces. What was in this vault, and why did Harold want it so badly? I looked at Alex, my mind racing. How do I get to it? He hesitated again, his gaze shifting away. I can't give you all the answers, but I can tell you this. If you want to find the vault and protect what Catherine left for you, you're going to have to be prepared to fight. And you're not just fighting Harold Clark. There are others, more powerful people involved. You won't be able to do it alone. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just about inheritance anymore. This was about something that could change the course of everything. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let anyone take what was rightfully mine. Not Harold, not anyone. I left the law office feeling like my world had shifted beneath me. Everything Alex had told me rattled me to the core. A hidden vault, powerful people involved, and Harold Clark standing in the middle of it all. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a game I had never been prepared to play, and yet somehow I was already in the thick of it. I couldn't just sit around and wait for things to happen. If I was going to keep what was mine, I had to be proactive. The vault, the documents, the assets, whatever they were, had to be protected. But I had no idea where to begin. I had no leads, no clear path forward. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how little I knew about Catherine's life, especially her dealings with Harold Clark. If there was something this important hidden away, why had Catherine never told me? And why hadn't I been prepared for any of this? I spent the next few days scouring through every document in the estate, hoping to find something, anything, that could point me in the right direction. I knew there had to be clues hidden within the paperwork. Somewhere Catherine had left a trail for me to follow, but nothing was jumping out at me. It was all legalese and fine print. No answers, no leads. It was on the fourth day after my meeting with Alex that I decided to pay another visit to the local cafe. I needed to get out of my head for a while. The constant thinking was driving me mad. Maybe a change of scenery would help. I walked into the cafe and ordered my usual black coffee, no sugar, and found an empty seat by the window. As I sat there watching the world go by, I tried to clear my head. The cafe was warm and cozy, the kind of place where people didn't ask questions, where you could just sit and be. I took a sip of my coffee and sighed, closing my eyes for a moment. Then I felt it. Someone was watching me. I opened my eyes, scanning the room, and then I saw him, Frank, the older man I had met by the beach. He was sitting at a corner table, a newspaper in front of him. His eyes were fixed on me, and there was an intensity in his gaze that made my stomach tighten. For a second, I debated whether I should go up to him. He had seemed so mysterious the first time we spoke, but now there was something else in his expression, something urgent. I had learned to trust my gut, and it was telling me that Frank knew more than he was letting on. I stood up and walked over to his table. When I approached, he looked up, his expression softening. "Ah, there you are," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Come, sit." I hesitated, but then pulled out the chair and sat down. "What's going on, Frank? You look like you've got something important to tell me." He set the newspaper down and leaned forward. "I've been keeping an eye on things, Laura. I didn't want to get involved, but after hearing about Harold Clark, I think you deserve to know the truth." My heart skipped a beat. The truth about what? Frank looked around the cafe, his eyes darting nervously as though checking to see if anyone was listening. "I knew Catherine long before you did," he said quietly. "We were close. She wasn't just some wealthy benefactor, you know. She was involved in things that would make most people uncomfortable if they knew the truth. And Harold Clark? He's not just a businessman. He's a predator, and he's been after Catherine's fortune for years." I leaned in, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean? What kind of things was Catherine involved in?" Frank hesitated, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. "Catherine wasn't always the sweet, benevolent woman you knew. She had her secrets. Her ties to Clark went back to when they were younger. There was a deal, a very old deal, that involved property, but also something more dangerous. Something Catherine never wanted to talk about. Something I don't even think she fully understood herself. I could feel my hands shaking. What kind of deal? And why didn't she ever tell me about this?" Frank's eyes softened with a mix of regret and concern. "Catherine was trying to protect you, Laura. She knew if she ever told you the full story, you'd be in danger. The land, the vault, it's all connected to a network of powerful people. Harold Clark isn't the only one after it. There are others, much worse, and now that Catherine's gone, they'll stop at nothing to get what's theirs." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "So this isn't just about money. It's about something much bigger." Frank nodded. "Exactly. And you're right in the middle of it now. I'm telling you this because you need to be prepared. If you want to protect what Catherine left you, you'll need to do more than just hold on to the property. You'll need to fight for it. And I'm afraid you're not going to be able to do it alone." I swallowed hard, trying to digest everything Frank had just said. "What do you suggest I do?" Frank leaned back in his chair, his face a mixture of concern and determination. First, you need to get your hands on the documents that Catherine left behind. The vault. There's a key and it's hidden somewhere. You need to find it. And when you do, you'll be able to protect yourself from Harold Clark and the others who are after you. I felt my heart race. A vault. A key. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but it was still so much to handle. And now I had no choice but to trust Frank. He was the only one who seemed to know more than he was letting on. I stood up, the weight of the conversation settling in my chest. Thank you, Frank. I don't know what this all means yet, but I'll do whatever it takes to protect what Catherine left me. You'll need to be strong, Laura, he said, standing up as well. And remember, you're not just fighting for money. You're fighting for your life. As I left the cafe, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much more dangerous. The game was only just beginning, and I had to be ready for whatever came next. It had been a few days since my conversation with Frank, and everything was moving so fast. The truth about Catherine's estate, the hidden vault, Harold Clark, and the powerful people behind it all. They were like pieces of a puzzle I was just starting to fit together. But the more I learned, the more I realized how much danger I was in. I hadn't told anyone about the vault, not even the lawyer. Not yet. I knew I needed to figure it out on my own. Frank had warned me that I couldn't trust anyone, not completely. Everyone had their own agendas, and I couldn't afford to let my guard down now. As I sat in my new living room, surrounded by the stacks of documents I'd gathered, I found myself once again staring at the piece of paper that had started it all. The letter from Catherine. I ran my fingers over the words, the ones that had meant so much when I first read them. This is your time, Laura. Live for yourself now. Catherine had known. She had known what was coming, even when I didn't. And now it was up to me to protect what she left behind. I picked up the phone and dialed the number Frank had given me. I was about to take another step into unknown territory, but I had no choice. I had to do this. The alternative was letting Harold Clark and whoever else was out there take everything from me. Hello? A voice answered on the other end. This is Laura Hayes, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I was told I could reach someone at this number about the vault. There was a brief silence, followed by a deep sigh. You're sure you want to go down this path? It's not a decision to take lightly. I don't have a choice, I said, my voice firm. I need to know where the vault is and how to get to it. Another pause. All right. You'll need to follow me carefully. But first I need to make something clear. You're not just protecting money or property. If you find what you're looking for, you'll be in even greater danger than you are now. I clenched my fists. I'm ready. The person on the other end of the line gave a reluctant chuckle. I hope you are, because once you take that first step, there's no going back. Now, the key you're looking for, it's not something that can be easily found. It's hidden in a place that Catherine trusted no one to find, not even you at first. I felt my stomach churn. Where is it? It's in the one place no one would think to look, the voice said cryptically. In plain sight, yet invisible to most. You've already been there, Laura. It's in your house. I froze. In my house? What do you mean? You need to start looking more carefully. It's always been there, but you haven't seen it. Look for a space that's been overlooked, a place where no one would think to hide something valuable. The key to the vault is tied to something Catherine always kept close to her heart. It's personal. I stood up, my mind racing. My house, my sanctuary, my new beginning. Was there something hidden here? Something I had missed? I'm not going to tell you exactly where it is, the voice continued. You have to find it for yourself. But once you do, it'll lead you straight to the vault. and once you have access to it, you'll have all the answers you've been looking for. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. This was real, this was happening. I was closer than I had ever been to uncovering the truth, but with every step I knew I was also getting closer to something dangerous, something I couldn't run from. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll find it." I hung up the phone and stood in the middle of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. The walls felt closer, as if they were closing in around me. I was being pulled into a world I wasn't prepared for. But there was no turning back now. I had to find the key. The days after my conversation with the mysterious voice felt like a blur. I couldn't think about anything except the vault, the key that was hidden somewhere in my house. I had already been through every corner of the property, but now I had to start looking again, this time with fresh eyes. What had I missed? Where could it be hiding? I started in the living room, pulling up carpets and checking behind the furniture. I even went so far as to inspect the light fixtures, assuming it could be tucked away somewhere unexpected. But nothing turned up. No hidden compartments, no secret drawers, just the same empty walls and furniture I had come to call home. Frustration started to bubble up, but I pushed it down. I couldn't afford to lose focus now. There was something here, something Catherine had hidden away, something that could change everything. The following day I went back to the house, determined to find the key. I had spent hours thinking about the cryptic advice the voice had given me. It's always been there. Look for a space that's been overlooked. A place where no one would think to hide something valuable. I stood still in the hallway, staring at the walls. What did this mean? I thought back to when I first moved in, how I had been in such a rush to settle into my new life that I hadn't really paid attention to the small details. Maybe that was it. Maybe I was looking for something too big, too obvious. I had to think smaller. Something personal, hidden in plain sight. I walked toward the bookshelf in the living room. It was filled with old books, family mementos, and a few random knickknacks. Catherine had always been a reader, and when she was alive we would often sit together and talk about the books she'd read. One of the books on the shelf caught my eye, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. It had been one of her favorites, and I smiled to myself as I remembered how much she loved that book. I pulled the book off the shelf, not thinking much of it, but then something unusual happened. A small metal object fell from between the pages. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up. It was a small ornate key attached to a faded piece of paper with a note scribbled on it in Catherine's handwriting. "The garden is your key." The note made my stomach churn. The garden, of course. Catherine had always loved her garden. I had walked past it every day since moving in, but I had never thought of it as anything more than a pleasant hobby. I had missed the most obvious clue. Without wasting another second, I grabbed the key and ran outside, my mind racing with possibilities. The garden was just outside, right behind the house, tucked away in a small, quiet corner. I had always thought it was just a lovely, well-kept space, but now I knew it held the answers. I reached the garden and looked around. There was a small shed in the back, overgrown with ivy. It looked like it hadn't been used in years, and I hadn't paid much attention to it until now. I approached it slowly, my heart beating faster with each step. I turned the rusty knob and pushed the door open, the creak of the hinges sending a shiver down my spine. Inside, the shed was dark, filled with old gardening tools and forgotten memories. But at the far corner, near the back wall, there was a small trap door. It was covered by piles of leaves and dirt, as if it had been deliberately hidden from view. I knelt down, brushing away the debris. The key I had found fit perfectly into the lock. With a loud click, the trap door opened, revealing a narrow wooden staircase that led down into the darkness. I hesitated. My heart raced in my chest as I stared at the stairs. This was it. the moment I had been waiting for. Everything that had been hidden, everything I didn't understand, was waiting for me down there. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The staircase creaked under my weight, and the air grew colder as I descended. My flashlight flickered in the dim light, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I had come this far. There was no turning back now. When I reached the bottom, I found myself in a small, musty room. The walls were lined with dusty shelves, and there was an old wooden chest sitting in the middle of the floor. I walked toward it, my fingers trembling as I reached for the lock. The key fit into the lock with ease. As I opened the chest, a sense of dread washed over me. Inside there were stacks of papers, documents, photographs, and old brittle files. This was it. This was what Catherine had been protecting. I began to sort through the papers, my heart pounding as I read the first few pages. They were contracts, legal documents, and some that were too cryptic for me to fully understand. But then, my eyes landed on a familiar name. Harold Clark. The papers revealed everything. Harold Clark had been involved in illegal business dealings with Catherine, secrets that had been buried for years. There were offshore accounts, shady transactions, and connections to powerful people I couldn't even begin to comprehend. Catherine had been trying to protect me from it all. She knew that if anyone ever found out, it would destroy everything. And now I was the one holding the key to the truth. But with that truth came danger. Harold Clark would stop at nothing to get his hands on this information, and now I had to figure out how to protect myself, my future, and the legacy Catherine had left behind. I sat in the dimly lit room, the chest open before me, its contents spilling out in a chaotic jumble. Papers, photographs, and contracts that revealed things I could hardly believe. The secrets Catherine had been hiding, things she had kept from everyone, even from me, were now in my hands. Harold Clark's name appeared over and over again in those papers, along with others who had ties to powerful corporations, individuals with influence and money who operated in the shadows. There were accounts, large sums of money, transactions with companies that didn't even exist anymore, and deals with people whose names I didn't recognize, but whose power was undeniable. I flipped through the documents, my hands shaking as I absorbed the weight of it all. Catherine had known about all of this. She had been part of something much larger than I had ever imagined, and now it was up to me to keep it all safe. But what would I do with this information? I didn't want to become embroiled in a world of deceit and corruption. I didn't want to risk everything Catherine had left me, but I knew I couldn't just walk away from it either. The legacy she had entrusted to me was too important. I had one choice: to protect the truth, to use it, but wisely. I closed the chest and locked it. The key I had found would stay with me, but only I would know where it was. No one else, especially Harold, would ever find it. I stood up, my thoughts racing. I was at a crossroads. For so long I had been living in the shadow of my past, haunted by the sacrifices I had made, by the relationships I had lost. But now, as I stood in the small, dim room beneath the house by the ocean, I realized something. The truth, this truth, was mine to control. No one else could hold power over me anymore. I left the shed, locking the trapdoor behind me. The cool night air felt like a balm on my skin, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I walked back to the house slowly, my mind made up. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep running from my past. I wasn't going to hide anymore. The legacy Catherine had left me wasn't just about money or land. It was about freedom. It was about having the strength to stand up and say, "This is mine." and no one is taking it from me. I would take control of what I could. I would use the money wisely, but I wouldn't let it define me, and I would keep the secrets of the vault safe, using them only when I had no other choice. I went into town the next day looking for a lawyer, someone who could help me with the estate, but also someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't try to take advantage of me. I had learned the hard way that not everyone could be trusted, but this time I wasn't going to make the same mistakes. As I sat in the lawyer's office, signing the necessary paperwork to secure the estate, I realized something else. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore. I had spent so many years seeking validation, trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect person, the one everyone could count on. But now, for the first time in my life, I was living for myself, and that felt incredible. I stood up, ready to face whatever came next. My life was mine to shape now, and I wasn't afraid. I had the strength, the courage, and the knowledge to protect what was rightfully mine. No one would take that from me. As I walked out of the lawyer's office and into the sunlight, I took a deep breath. The air felt different now, lighter, as if the weight of the past had been lifted, and the future was wide open, full of possibility. I didn't know what the next chapter of my life would hold, but I knew one thing. I was ready for it, ready to live my life, my way. No more compromises, no more looking back. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled, knowing that I was exactly where I was meant to be.